You are listening to the CADDle Call podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentac Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The CADDle Call podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the CADDle Call podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentac Consultants. I am Jim, your unnecessarily loud and talkative host, and with me, as always, is my partner.
It's Rocco.
It's Rocco. Never unnecessarily loud or talkative. Only one of us can do that, I guess.
I'm just unnecessary.
You're just unnecessary. He's just there to take all of my money and leave me to do all the work. That's what he does, people. It's completely unfair. And yet, here we are every week doing the podcast. So, all right, what are we talking about?
The way it is.
It's the way it is. That's the way it always is. It's almost like being married. They take all the money and leave you to do all the work.
Yep.
Yep. So I got a wife and a business partner, and I get nothing. I just work all day.
Yep.
See, he doesn't even apologize. So rude.
Nope.
Oh, goodness. All right. So what are you talking? Oh, I know what we're talking about today. We're talking about tool palettes today, right? Which I call CAD's most underrated feature. So, look, it doesn't matter which CAD system you're working in, whether it's, BricsCAD or AutoCAD or Civil 3D or MicroStation. The concept of tool palettes is common to all of them. And the concept is incredibly simple, but I have just seen that over, decades of working as a tech consultant in the design world, that very few firms actually make good use of what it is, to my mind, right? It's one of the most powerful and time-saving features in a CAD system, right? A tool palette it's a simple tab, right, on your screen that houses a collection of, predefined tools for your staff to use. And a lot of these CAD systems come with example tools right out of the box, right? To show you the capabilities of tool palettes, and there are others like Civil 3D that come with extensive tools built in, right, as part of the tool palette structure for items like road design templates. And I think that makes people pause because they don't want to mess with what's there, but you can modify it to your own needs. And I think, either way, what seems to be the most common is that, the companies just leave the basic tool palettes in place and they never even look at customizing those to their own needs. Right? And look, I can understand that from your IT guys, right? They're usually, back-end networking security specialists who can, barely draw a line in CAD. The thing that actually throws me here is how many CAD managers let this vital tool slide by with barely a glance, right? And in today's podcast, I want to talk about the ways that you can make use of your tool palettes in your CAD system, whichever one you're using, to make life easier for everybody in your design group. So, Rocco, are tool palettes for our design clients, is it something that comes up a lot in conversation, or is it something that you kind of have to mention to people, bring it to their attention?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't really come up. I mean, I think some of the more advanced CAD managers that we talk to are utilizing them and try to deploy them, but not part of regular conversation. That's for sure. I think it's more of a pull effort for sure.
And it's kind of why I want to bring this up as a topic today, because I think it's something that more people do need to look at and talk about. So let's start with the concept of basic drafting tools, or primitives, right? Basic lines and arcs and circles and things like that. And I actually think that may be part of the problem here. In the example tools and in the help files and even in the YouTube videos, right, that you see on the tool palettes for these systems, most of the software developers for these CAD systems focus on how do you add basic items, right? Like lines and text and leaders and so on to their palettes. And I think that's fine, right? And there is a good use for those. But I feel that, a lot of the, what we'll call the pushback or the reluctance that I see in adapting the palettes concept is because CAD people see that, when you create a polyline that comes in yellow using the sanitary line type, they look at that and say, well, that's useful for a beginner who really doesn't know what they're doing, but it actually has the potential to wreak havoc in a production file. Right? You want your CAD people using layers and styles and company standards correctly, and you just don't want them throwing, dumb lines and polylines with colors and line types set as overrides onto your plan to make it easy. I get that. The thing is, the basic tools don't need to be set that way, right? Tool palettes in your CAD system, they'll let you structure the standard tools like lines and polylines and blocks and other primitives to use the correct layer settings, right? And keep all of your properties set to by layer. And the real powerful thing here is that you can set, a sanitary line, for example, to come in on the correct layer, even when your designer has forgotten to set the correct layer. Think on that for a minute, right? Using tool palettes for basic text, line work, dimensions, and so on means that all of your fonts, all of your styles, all of your layers are correctly set with no user input. Right? In other words, if I'm on the borders layer in my drawing and I click that sanitary line in the tool palette, it's not going to matter. Right? That line is going to come in on the correct layer with all the correct sizing and scaling options. Right? And if you think about that, that means that all of the, those engineers who get into your CAD system like twice a year and they destroy your plotting standards for whatever file they work in, you don't have to worry about them because they're just going to point and click and everything is going to come in correct, right? So, Rocco, what's kind of the general vibe on tool palettes? I know you don't talk about it a lot, right? But when it does come up, what's the vibe from architects and engineering clients that you talk to, right? Do you think that there's a resistance to them? Or do you think that a lot of people just don't understand, the power of them or the functionality that's built into their system?
Yeah, I think there is resistance to it, and then it's trying to convince people that, hey, by taking a few, some time up front, that it's going to save you a ton of time in the back end. They don't always see that value, because everybody looks for the short-term gains. Well, it doesn't help me right now, so why should I do that? So that it definitely takes some convincing. Again, unless you're somebody, like some of the experienced CAD managers that we've spoken to who've been around for a long time and have done this, and they truly see the value. So I think that's the case. And Jim, I've got a question for you before we kind of move on here. So does this, and it's kind of a silly question coming from somebody who's not deeply technical, right? But does the version of the software that you're working with matter in this case? In other words, if you're switching from one version to the next, does all that do all these tool palettes need to be reset?
Now, well, what you have to do with it, I know, talk a little bit about this later, but all you really need to do is if you centralize it, particularly on your network, all you have to do is just set the path. And they're always forward compatible. In other words, if you're going from, the 2022 version of your CAD system to the 2023 version, not a problem at all. Going backwards, it usually goes back 2 or 3 releases with no problem because you're dealing with, they're usually DWGs is a lot of what you're doing there. So the file format does become an issue if you got 2 or 3 people working like 4 releases of your CAD system back, that might present a problem. But generally, it's just about when you put in the new CAD system, the 2023 version, just point the path for your tool palettes to where the tool palettes are, and you're done. So it's usually just a one-stop kind of thing.
Yeah, that's nice then.
Yeah, it makes it real easy to keep these things consistent and updated.
Yeah,
I like it. So I think probably the most powerful, I'll say, feature of the tool palette is its ability to handle blocks and symbols. And this is fantastic, right? Because you can easily build palettes with standard items that you use every day, like your borders and your logos and general notes and standard symbols and callouts. It's just about anything else that you can think of, right? You can integrate both dynamic and parametric blocks into your palettes so that you don't need to, maintain a list of hundreds of blocks, just a handful, right? That your users can easily edit on screen within your design constraints after they've been placed. And just like those simple primitives, right? Block layering can be predefined, right? But the blocks and symbols, they have additional feature settings when they get placed on your palettes, right? You can set your block scale, your block rotation, right? Block naming. You can even switch it so that your blocks come in as XREFs, so that they will update when there are changes made, right? It's even possible to set the block to different types of annotative scaling, right? So instead of just a standard annotative scaling, right, you can set it so that if the dim scale or the anno scale change differently, the block sizes itself appropriately when you insert it. And another thing I like about the blocks on the palettes is that they can be added to the palette in two distinct ways, either from a file, right, or from a DWG file. And from a file is really useful if you've already got they're still drawings, right? But I'm talking about files that have been saved out to your network or whatever. And it's really useful if you've got, you've already put together a library of symbols and so on that you W blocked out and saved to your network. You can just use Windows Explorer to just drag and drop hundreds at a time of these files onto your palette, and then go in afterward and adjust their control settings, right? If you have an extensive library already set, it's absolutely the best way to go. Alternatively, you can build a single drawing file, one master DWG, right, and create all of your blocks in there before adding them to the palette. In other words, you can just make a file called standard structural symbols, right? And then you can just add all the blocks from right within that drawing file. And that gives you the ability to save and edit that drawing whenever updates are needed, right? And it makes it, I think, much easier to create backup copies of one drawing file instead of, hundreds of individual small ones. And I think from a CAD management stance, it's a lot easier, right, to, administer a half dozen drawing files in one folder than it is to organize and structure and clean up a few hundred or maybe even 1,000, individual files across, 50 directories and subfolders. And, like most things in the CAD world, right, the key to this is in organization, right? You need to think through your palette structure and make it simple for people to use while still keeping it well organized and performing as you need it to. And that's what I want to kind of get into in the next half of our show. All right, so let's take a quick break to hear from today's sponsor, and we'll be back in just a minute, folks, with more of the CADDle Call podcast. Today's CADDle Call podcast is being brought to you by BricsCAD, the latest and greatest CAD software out there on the market today. It's growing by leaps and bounds, and the beauty of it is that BricsCAD allows you to use all of your current drawing files, all of the CAD commands and macros and features and Lisp routines and customizations and configurations that you've already developed, right? Without any transition. Your people can be up and running in BricsCAD in a matter of hours, right? So to help you make that transition here at Zentac, one of the things that we've done is we have actually created a Make the Move to BricsCAD program to help you move from your Autodesk-based platform over into BricsCAD with minimal time and risk and investment. And Rocco is going to tell you all about it. Rocco?
I'm going to tell you all about it. Well, there's a great deal of information that's available right on our website. It's zentacconsultants.net. You can reach out to us at sales@zentacconsultants.net or give us a call, 866-824-4459. But yeah, that's the core idea behind it, Jim. If you're an AutoCAD user and you're looking to make the move to BricsCAD, we're here to help make an easier transition for you. So check us out. Let us know how we can help you.
Perfect answer. BricsCAD, the smartest CAD system on the market today. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the CADDle Call podcast. We're talking about tool palettes in the CAD world and what they can do for your internal workflows. And, I left off in the first half of the show, talking about, organizing your palettes is the key, right? So let's pick up there. The first thing that you need to understand about tool palette structures is that you really don't want to modify the palettes that come out of the box with your CAD system. If you do, then there's the potential that, during an update or an upgrade, or if you ever need to, run a repair, that all your customizations can be overwritten and lost, right? That's not to say that you can't use those tools, but the best way to do it is to copy the entire tool palette structure out to a network location and have all of your users point their tool palettes, usually, and it's usually under the options section of your local CAD profile. You point the tool palettes path to read from your network location. Right? This keeps the overwrite issue from happening. And it also gives you one central location to make changes in. Right? And then you have those changes automatically pushed out across your entire CAD group. It means your CAD manager makes change in one spot and everybody has the updates without having to push out or copy anything. And I think that the next thing that you guys are going to want to do is to flesh out your tool palettes hierarchy. In other words, right, go out and use a flowcharting tool or even something as simple as Excel, right, to plan out what tabs are going to be under what palettes. And look, do yourself a favor and do not try to figure this out as you're actually doing the tool palette work. I promise you, you're going to hate your life if you try. We're talking about putting together a tiered hierarchy of company details and symbols and tools, right, alongside standard details and borders that are client specific and government agency standards. And I can tell you from a very painful personal experience that putting that together on the fly will make you miserable. You're going to fail tragically, and you're going to have to delete it all and start again. This is definitely a case where the 5 Ps, as my military folks out there can tell you, definitely apply to the work structure, right? So Rocco, I'm a huge fan of planning, but it's a step that clients tend to want to glide past, right? Not just in tool palettes, but in all of our work. What's the resistance here? I mean, why is allowing time for planning always a big sticking point on any job, not just tool palettes?
Yeah, because people see, first of all, it's like a work stoppage, right? I mean, you got to stop everything and plan it all out and think it through, and that takes time. And getting, if the more people you have involved in the process, the more complicated it's going to get, because not everybody agrees all the time. So I think that's the biggest barrier. And then the other factor is, okay, chances are it's going to lead to a cost, right? And do we have the budget for that, or is it going to get approved? So there's a lot of barriers to it. But if you want it done right, I mean, you have to plan it. It's just a common sense way of structuring anything, right? Is to think it through and plan it all out.
Yeah, always makes me think of the one phrase that as a parent my child hated more than anything. Right, my son's forever to this day, he still hates the phrase, but he's found himself using it now, which is that it's funny. There was never time to do it right, but there's always time to do it again. And I beat him up with that as a kid, with his homework and every job he ever did, and it's but it's true. I mean, and some folks, I guess, just never grasp that lesson, right? If you don't put in that planning phase and you don't put up the time and the effort and the money up front, you're gonna pay 10 times that later on. So look, folks, whatever your view of preparation and planning is in general, trust me that for tool palettes, it is an absolute must. All right, you're gonna want to start by creating your own company palette in the tool palette. It may be called a category or something else in your CAD system, but essentially it's the top level of your palette structure, right? And then beneath that, you're going to want to build palette groups or subcategories for items like, your company standard details or your municipal borders and so on. Basically, your next level, you want to be large groupings to organize your tools, okay? And below that, each of those groups is going to host single palettes or tabs that can be individually named for things like, electrical symbols or annotation callouts or company borders. The individual palette level there, when you get to that tabs, on the side of your palettes, that's where you're going to want to place all your symbols and details and tools with understandable names, right? I'm stressing that. In other words, my electric symbols palette should have a 110 volt outlet and a 240 volt outlet symbol, right? With all the correct settings. It should never have tools on it that say, E-symbol 1 or outlet 16. Naming is a vital part of this process, and you can't skip it. Look, you can drag and drop, like I said earlier, your W blocks, those files into your palette, right? And they may come in as symbol 5, right? But you need to take the time to rename those appropriately, right? As you're setting up all the general settings like layers and scaling and the other things we talked about. A tool is useless if your users can't easily identify what it is, right? And you don't want to make the mistake of saying something, like, oh, my guys have used these symbols for years. They know what they are. You need to plan for, bringing on new employees and people moving positions in your firm, right? Especially in these times, right? Look, if you guys wind up with the same staff this time next year, I think that puts you ahead of 90% of the design firms in today's world. That's how fast turnover is going today. So Rocco, we help people customize and build palettes for their design groups, right? What are the biggest things that you see in getting those jobs approved internally? And how can folks get an idea of what we do in this line?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge is convincing management of the value, right? And that's, it all depends on the situation, the size of the organization, how a lot of times how current they are with use of the technology. So every customer environment is unique and different, but you could learn more about it at under our CAD standards section right on our website at zentacconsultants.net. Or just reach out to us. I mean, this is stuff that we do every day. I mean, we'd be happy to set up a discussion with you guys and kind of get under the hood a little bit, see what you have in place, and see how we can help you. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a huge upfront project. I mean, we work with customers in phases, so try not to scare you away with a big upfront cost. I think the important thing is to see the value of stuff like this, and that you need to plan it out, and see that there's the automation long term is going to save you a lot of time and money.
There you go. So there you go, folks. So reach out and talk to Rocco. Give him something to do. He just sits around all day taking my money. Make him work for it. So, so like I said at the top of the show, I don't understand how the tool palettes aren't a must-have item in every design firm. They give you the opportunity to put almost all of the design and drafting tools that your people need in an organized structure right on their screen that they just have to click on, right? And like I said, not only that, but everything's going to come in on the right layer with the right font at the right size. And the source files can be updated by CAD management as you need it, okay? And push that to everybody instantly. Why are we letting our designers waste countless hours, right? Setting a layer current, finding the right drafting tool, running through the setup process for that tool, and then editing it afterwards, right, to define the required properties and so on. Right? Think of how many thousands of commands we run in a CAD system each day, right? And then we have to perform all of those steps for each one of those commands. Isn't it better for everybody involved if we can just go to the side palette, click the category, place the tool or the feature in the drawing with all the settings and layers and so on already done and established? And I have had this conversation with hundreds of people over the years. And I always get one of two pushback replies, right? Either, oh, we don't need that. My staff is really fast, right? Or, I think it's important that my guys learn how to draw things manually so that they understand the design process. Really? Look, I'm not to be a jerk here, but to my mind, that's like making your kid handwrite his book report instead of using a computer because it's important that he understands the way that letters go together. It's crazy. It serves no purpose. I don't get it. All right. So this is my little opinion here. So let me wrap up here for today by saying that in the CAD world, tool palettes are the most time-saving and efficiency-generating tool that there is. All right. And look, if you can set those up yourself, awesome. Go get to it today and make it happen. And if you can't, just give us a call here at Zentac and we'll help you get going. right? Either way works. Just get it to happen, folks. All right, people, we are out of here, and we will catch you next time on the CADDle Call podcast. All right, everybody, today's CADDle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentac Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentac Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentac strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentac?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentacconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentacconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from y'all.